What if everything you thought you knew about the royal baby was a lie? What if the child whose birth was celebrated around the world, whose arrival was meant to symbolize love conquering tradition, was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion? For 6 years, the world believed in the story of baby Archie Harrison, the son of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. We saw the headlines, the grainy photos, the smiles. But what if behind those smiles was silence? What if, behind palace walls, there was no newborn cry, no sleepless nights, and no mother recovering from childbirth? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Tonight, the woman who was there, inside the Sussex household during those mysterious early weeks, finally breaks her silence. She was hired as Archie's nanny, but she says she never saw a newborn, never saw hospital photos, never once saw Meghan showing signs of recent birth. And when she asked questions, she was told one thing: do your job and don't ask. Those words haunted her for years. Because this wasn't just any job. This was the world's most watched family, the modern fairy tale that had captured millions of hearts. Meghan Markle, the actress turned duchess, and Prince Harry, the rebellious royal who gave up his crown for love. Together, they promised to rewrite the monarchy's story. But when it came to the birth of their son, something didn't add up. The world first heard the news in May 2019. The announcement came from the palace's press office, short, sterile, and strangely timed. The official statement said Meghan had gone into labor in the early hours of the morning and that both mother and baby were doing well. But within minutes, British media noticed inconsistencies. The announcement was made before the supposed birth time. The hospital was never confirmed. And the traditional photo of the royal couple leaving the maternity ward, the same image that defined Princess Diana and Kate Middleton's motherhood, never came. Instead, there was silence. Then, days later, a carefully choreographed photo op in Windsor Castle. Meghan wore white. Harry looked nervous. The baby, swaddled tightly, was held at an angle no one could truly see. He has the sweetest temperament, Meghan said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Reporters laughed. Flashbulbs popped. And just like that, the world moved on. But the nanny didn't. When she was first contacted about the position, she thought it was a dream come true. A royal household, a newborn, a chance to serve her country in an intimate, trusted role. The call came late one night from a private number. A man introduced himself as a representative of the Sussex household. He didn't give his title, didn't mention Meghan or Harry by name. He simply said, "We're looking for someone discreet." She accepted, not realizing that this job would pull her into one of the most whispered scandals in modern royal history. From the moment she stepped foot in Frogmore Cottage, she felt something was wrong. There was no chaos, no sound of life. Newborns are loud. They cry, they feed, they disrupt everything. But here, there was silence. The house looked like a showroom, spotless, still, unnaturally perfect. She was shown to the nursery, a room filled with designer toys, expensive cribs, and baby clothes still wrapped in tissue. She asked when she would meet the baby. The assistant smiled and said, "Soon." Days passed. No baby. No mother recovering. No late-night feedings or diaper changes. Meghan appeared occasionally, always composed, dressed impeccably, glowing in a way that felt deliberate. "Don't worry," she'd say. "He's resting." But where? And with whom? The nanny's first red flag came when she noticed the bottles in the kitchen. They were arranged neatly on the counter, but none had been used. Not once. Formula cans unopened, nipples still sealed. Even the diapers, stacked perfectly, identical sizes, untouched. She'd worked in homes before. She knew the signs of a newborn. This wasn't one of them. She started to wonder if she was being tested. Maybe the family wanted to see how she'd handle secrecy. Maybe the baby was being kept elsewhere for security. But that theory collapsed the day she was told to prepare for visitors. "There will be press photos tomorrow," she was informed. "Make sure the nursery looks lived in." That night, she fluffed pillows, unwrapped toys, and placed half-empty bottles around the room. It felt like setting a stage. And in a way, it was. The next morning, Meghan appeared with a stylist, not a nurse. Harry followed behind, distracted, pacing, muttering to himself. The nanny waited for instructions. Was the baby coming? Should she prepare a bottle? Nothing. Meghan posed for photos holding the same blanket she'd seen folded in the corner. Cameras clicked. Smiles were exchanged. But still, no baby in sight. Later that day, the first official photo of Archie was released. The world saw what appeared to be a happy family moment. But to the nanny, something was off. The lighting didn't match the time of day. The baby's size seemed inconsistent. And Megan's posture, rigid, careful, as if she were holding something heavier than a newborn, made her stomach twist. Then came the whispers. Staff avoided eye contact. Conversation stopped when she entered the room. Once, she overheard two aides arguing in the kitchen. "We can't keep this up forever," one said. The other replied, "We just need to make it to the announcement. After that, it won't matter." The nanny froze. The announcement? What announcement? She later learned they were referring to the official baptism, another private event with no media access, no public witness. Another staged moment. Another performance. As weeks turned into months, the nanny's confusion deepened. No medical team ever visited the house. No postpartum care, no baby appointments, no follow-up checks. She once asked if she could accompany Meghan to a routine pediatric appointment. The assistant responded sharply, "There's no need. Everything's being handled." By whom, she wondered. There were no nurses, no prams, no sign of a baby at all. She started journaling every detail. The dates, the hours, the strange silences. "Something isn't right," she wrote. "I feel like I'm caring for a ghost." Her entries would later become part of what she called her evidence, notes that, 6 years later, she would hand to journalists. But in those first days, she was still trying to understand the rules of the house. She was told never to speak to outsiders, never to answer questions about Archie, and never, under any circumstances, to discuss what she did or didn't see. It felt like a trap. The pay was generous, but the unease was constant. One night, unable to sleep, she walked through the hallways. The moonlight fell across the nursery door. Inside, the mobile above the crib turned slowly in the still air. She stepped closer and realized something. There were no sounds. Not even breathing. The baby monitor was on, but the screen was black. No movement. She turned it off and back on. Still nothing. The next morning, she confronted one of the senior aides. "Where is Archie?" she asked quietly. The aide smiled tightly. "Focus on your tasks," he said. "Everything you need to know is already arranged." That's when she knew. She wasn't hired to care for a baby. She was hired to maintain an illusion. From that day, she started noticing patterns. Whenever there were visitors, staff rushed to rearrange rooms. A car would arrive with tinted windows. Meghan would vanish for hours, then return smiling, carrying a blanket. The nanny was never present during those hours. Once, she heard a soft mechanical sound from the living room, like a camera shutter repeating. She peeked inside. Meghan was posing for photos, holding the same blanket under studio lights. She asked herself over and over, "Where's the baby?" The question ate at her. Every instinct she had as a caretaker screamed that something was wrong. She thought about leaving, but fear kept her there. Her contract included a clause, pound 500,000 fine for breach of confidentiality. The document was thicker than most legal handbooks. Every page marked with royal seals. The stress began to show. She lost sleep, weight, peace. Friends noticed she'd grown withdrawn. She couldn't tell them why. "I'm working for someone important," she'd say vaguely. They had no idea how important, or how strange. When the media began speculating about the baby's true birth location, the nanny realized the outside world was just as confused as she was. Reports claimed Meghan had given birth in a secret London hospital. Others said it was at home in Windsor. No staff from any hospital ever confirmed attending her labor. Even the birth certificate, released weeks later, listed an unusual detail: Meghan's occupation, Princess of the United Kingdom, a title she'd never legally held. It felt like a clue hidden in plain sight, a quiet rebellion against a narrative already cracking. Still, the nanny stayed silent, until the day she found something that changed everything. While organizing Meghan's digital files, she stumbled across a folder labeled Prototype. Inside were images, staged pregnancy shots, edited bump sizes, and notes from photographers. Adjust curvature. Reshoot at 34 weeks. Lighting must match Oprah clip. She froze. It wasn't proof, but it was something. Enough to suggest that even the pregnancy timeline might have been manufactured. But before she could look further, the file vanished. Deleted remotely. The next morning, Her access to all household devices was revoked. The head of security told her she'd be reassigned to lighter duties. She knew what that meant: containment, control. She was being silenced. She finished her last day in quiet disbelief. As she walked out of Frogmore Cottage for the final time, she looked back at the nursery window. Curtains drawn. No sound. No baby. Just stillness. She whispered to herself, "What are you hiding, Meghan?" For 6 years, she kept her silence, watching from afar as the Sussexes built their empire: Netflix deals, interviews, books, documentaries. Each time Meghan spoke about motherhood, about her birthing journey, the nanny felt her stomach twist, because she knew the truth, or at least part of it. Now, after all this time, she's ready to talk. Her story is not about hatred or revenge, she says. It's about truth. "I don't care if people believe me," she told an independent journalist recently. "I just want to tell what I saw. Or rather, what I didn't see." And what she didn't see is what shocks the world the most. No hospital arrival. No postpartum recovery. No newborn. So what really happened in those early days of May 2019? Was Archie Harrison truly born of Meghan Markle? Or was his birth the product of secrecy, strategy, and something far more complex than the public could imagine? Because if the nanny story holds even a fragment of truth, it could unravel one of the biggest royal mysteries of the decade. And as you'll soon discover, this wasn't just a secret. It was a carefully constructed narrative. A performance meant to protect reputations, reshape legacy, and silence the one person who dared to ask the simplest question of all. Where's the baby? What she found next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It started with a phone call that would change her life forever. No royal letter. No formal summons. Just a vibration on her nightstand at 10:47 p.m. and a voice that sounded rehearsed, official, and cold. "We're calling from the household office regarding a childcare position. Your name came highly recommended. Are you available to begin immediately?" The nanny, let's call her Claire, sat upright, clutching the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She'd been a nanny for nearly 15 years, working for high-profile families across London. But this was different. The caller wouldn't give details. No family name, no address, just a phrase that froze her in place. "This is a royal matter." Claire hesitated. "May I ask which member of the royal family?" There was a pause, then a carefully measured reply. "You'll be briefed upon arrival. Discretion is paramount." Something in his tone felt like a warning. But she said yes. Within an hour, a car pulled up outside her small flat in Kensington. A sleek, black Range Rover. The driver, dressed in plain black, opened the door without a word. Inside, the air smelled of leather and lavender. On the seat was an envelope, her name typed in bold letters. No return address. No signature. Just an embossed seal, the royal crown. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a single page. "Report to Windsor tomorrow. Confidential assignment. Non-disclosure mandatory." Her hands shook as she read it again. No mention of the child, no mention of pay, not even a contact name. But it didn't matter. For most nannies, a call like this was a career-defining moment, a royal appointment, a lifetime reference. She spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was about to meet the most famous newborn in the world. At dawn, the same car arrived. The driver still didn't speak. As they drove through the fog toward Windsor, Claire watched the gray countryside blur by. "You've worked with children before?" the driver asked finally. "Yes," she replied. "I've cared for newborns, twins, even royal households in Europe." He nodded slightly. "Then you'll fit in. Just remember, you didn't hear this from me. Keep your head down and your mouth shut. That's how people survive in this job." The phrase hit her like ice water. "Survive?" she repeated softly, but the driver said nothing more. When they arrived at Frogmore Cottage, the gates opened silently. Security officers stood like statues. No press, no photographers, no sound. It was as though the world's most talked-about family had vanished from public view. Claire expected to hear a baby crying, but there was nothing. Just birds in the distance and the crunch of gravel beneath her shoes. A woman in a gray suit met her at the door. "You must be Claire. Come in. Phone's off, please." She held out her hand for the device, placed it in a lockbox, and smiled politely. "Welcome to the household." Inside, the cottage looked brand new. Fresh paint, flowers in every room, expensive art. But it felt empty, too quiet, too staged. You'll be living on site, the woman continued briskly. You'll receive instructions daily. You'll see the family at scheduled times only. The family, Claire repeated. Meaning the Duke and Duchess? The woman nodded. Yes. And the baby. Claire smiled instinctively, but the woman didn't smile back. Before you begin, there's one more thing. She opened a folder and slid a document across the table. Confidentiality agreement. You'll need to sign before proceeding. Claire skimmed the pages. It was massive, 37 clauses detailing everything she couldn't do. No discussing the child. No photographing the property. No writing, no phone calls about work, no contact with media. The penalty for breach? £500,000. I've worked under NDAs before, Claire said nervously, but never one this strict. The woman's tone softened only slightly. This is no ordinary household. You understand that, don't you? Claire nodded and signed. Within minutes, she was shown to her quarters, a small, pristine room overlooking the gardens. On the dresser was a uniform folded neatly, a pale blue dress, white apron, and name tag that read simply Nanny. No surname, no individuality, just a role. That night, she unpacked her suitcase in silence. From the window, she could see lights flickering in the main house. A shadow moved across the curtain, tall, red-haired, unmistakable. Prince Harry. Her pulse quickened. Somewhere beyond those walls was Meghan Markle, supposedly resting after giving birth just weeks earlier. And somewhere, she thought, there should be a baby. But the silence was unbearable. Morning came. The woman in gray, whom Claire now learned was a private household manager named Fiona, handed her a folder. Daily duties, she said briskly. Feeding schedule, sleep schedule, inventory list. Claire flipped through the pages. Every line was perfectly typed, but something was off. The feeding times didn't make sense. 4 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., but no notes on volume, no record of formula type or frequency. It looked more like a template than a real baby's log. Where's the baby now? Claire asked. Fiona hesitated. Resting with the Duchess. You'll meet him soon. But soon never came. For the first 2 days, she prepared bottles, folded blankets, and sterilized pacifiers. But none were ever used. Every evening, she checked the waste bin, empty. No bottle caps, no wipes, no diapers. The nursery looked untouched, like a showroom. By the 3rd day, she couldn't contain her unease. Is the baby okay? She asked one of the maids. The maid glanced around nervously before whispering. Don't ask questions. Just follow instructions. That answer terrified her more than any scream could have. Later that afternoon, Claire was summoned to the sitting room. Meghan was there, seated by the window, wearing a flowing cream dress. Her hair was immaculate, her face glowing. She smiled as Claire entered, her voice calm but distant. You must be the new nanny. Thank you for joining us. Claire curtsied. It's an honor, Your Grace. Please, call me Meghan, she replied with a soft laugh. I know it must feel strange. So much attention on such a private matter. Claire nodded. Yes, it's quite extraordinary. Meghan's gaze drifted toward the empty bassinet beside her chair. He's been sleeping well, she said, almost rehearsed. Such a good baby. That's wonderful, Claire replied politely, though her stomach tightened. The blanket in the bassinet was folded perfectly. No indentation. No warmth. Would you like me to prepare his feeding? Claire offered. Meghan paused. Not right now. I'll call you when he wakes. Claire waited for hours, but the call never came. That night, she sat alone in the staff kitchen, staring at the clock. Midnight. Still no sound. No cry. Nothing. She thought of every newborn she'd ever cared for. The noise, the chaos, the exhaustion. This wasn't normal. The next morning, she decided to speak with Harry. Maybe he would reassure her. She caught him leaving through the back door, wearing casual clothes and sunglasses. Sir, she said softly. He turned, startled. Yes. I just wanted to ask if there's anything special I should prepare for the baby today. Harry's expression shifted. Everything's under control, he said quickly. Just follow the schedule. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, and please, don't ask questions about my family. It wasn't angry, it was fearful. Days turned into a week. Claire's confusion grew. She began noticing odd patterns. Every time visitors were expected, staff rearranged rooms. A camera crew appeared one afternoon to film what was described as family B-roll. Claire was told to stay upstairs, but she peeked from the landing anyway. Meghan stood by the window, cradling something wrapped in a white blanket. Flashlights flickered. Harry stood nearby, adjusting his shirt nervously. The photographer said, "Hold him higher." Meghan obliged, but Claire noticed the way her arms tensed, how she adjusted the blanket like she was holding weight, not warmth. There was no sound, no cooing, no motion. After the crew left, Claire walked past the sitting room. The blanket lay draped on the sofa. Flat. Empty. That was the moment her stomach dropped. She began to question everything. Her own sanity, even. Was the baby kept elsewhere for safety? Was she overthinking? But every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. That evening, Fiona approached her. "You've been asking questions," she said quietly. "I'm just trying to understand my role," Claire replied cautiously. "Your role is to ensure this household runs smoothly. That's all. But I haven't even met the child." Fiona's eyes hardened. "You will, when it's appropriate. Until then, do not press the issue." The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered. 2 nights later, Claire was awakened by movement outside her window. She peeked through the curtain and saw headlights pulling into the driveway. A man in a dark suit stepped out, carrying what looked like a baby carrier. He was met by Fiona, who ushered him inside. Claire waited, heart racing. After 20 minutes, the man left, without the carrier. The next morning, Meghan emerged for breakfast looking radiant, the very picture of maternal bliss. "He's sleeping so soundly," she said. "It's been such a blessing." Claire wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that there was a baby somewhere in that house. But later, when she went to the nursery, she saw the carrier tucked beneath the crib, still spotless, with the factory tags attached. Her hands shook as she ran her fingers across the handle. This wasn't carelessness. This was a performance. By the end of her second week, Claire considered resigning. But before she could, she was asked to sign another document. An addendum, Fiona called it. It was shorter, but more alarming. It stated that Claire was to refrain from discussing the circumstances of the child's care, physical presence, or health. That phrase, physical presence, sent chills through her. What kind of contract used language like that? Still, she signed. Fear outweighed curiosity. That same afternoon, Meghan called her into the parlor. "You've been doing well," she said warmly. "I know this isn't a typical environment. I just need loyalty. The world doesn't understand the pressures I'm under. I need people I can trust." Claire nodded. "You can trust me." "I'm sure I can," Meghan replied with a faint smile. "Because once you've seen behind the curtain, there's no going back." The words lingered in Claire's mind for days. Behind the curtain. What did she mean? And then one evening, Claire got her answer. She was called to assist with a special presentation. Fiona handed her a set of instructions. Arrange the nursery, place blankets, dim the lights, ensure everything looked natural. "We'll have guests tonight," she said. "They must believe everything is normal." As Claire adjusted the crib mobile, she heard Meghan's laughter echoing down the hall. "It'll be perfect," she said to someone, her voice light, confident, rehearsed. Claire stood frozen as the front door opened. A photographer entered, accompanied by an aide. "Let's make it quick," Meghan said. They positioned her near the crib, angled the light, and instructed her to hold the blanket again. Harry stood by, smiling tightly. The shutter clicked. Once, twice, again, and then, as quickly as it began, it was over. The aide collected the camera, the photographer left, and the cottage returned to silence. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. The ticking clock felt like thunder. She knew she'd just witnessed something. Something big, something staged. But she couldn't prove it. She sat by the window, staring into the garden, whispering to herself, "What are they hiding?" Because no matter how hard she tried to convince herself that there was an innocent explanation, one truth haunted her. She had been working in that house for almost 2 weeks, and she had never once seen Archie Harrison. And the moment she finally did would leave her questioning everything she thought she knew about truth, loyalty, and motherhood. What happened next would shake her to her core, and it would prove that this royal story was far from a fairy tale. You could tell everything about a home from its sound. The hum of a washing machine, the soft rattle of dishes in the sink, the distant cry of a baby that woke the whole household. But Frogmore Cottage was silent. Not peaceful, silent. It was the kind of silence that felt unnatural, like sound itself was afraid to enter. For Claire, silence was the first real warning. Babies brought noise, a living rhythm. But here, it was as though time had stopped. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. The first morning she woke in her quarters, she expected chaos. Newborns didn't follow schedules. There should have been crying at dawn, frantic footsteps, hushed voices. Instead, there was birdsong and the smell of polished oak. She got dressed, put on her pale blue uniform, and walked down the narrow staircase toward the nursery. Her shoes barely made a sound on the carpet. Everything in the cottage gleamed. Flowers replaced daily, cushions fluffed, curtains perfectly drawn. Yet no life. No clutter. No mess. It looked like a set designed to look like family life, not the real thing. The nursery was her favorite room at first. It was exquisite. A custom-made white crib with the Sussex crest carved into the headboard. Hand-woven blankets from Morocco. Silver rattles engraved with initials, HMW. Every detail whispered luxury. But it all sat untouched. Claire ran her hand across the dresser. No dust, no bottles, no traces of a real baby. The wipes were sealed. The changing table was spotless. And the crib sheets, crisp, perfectly ironed. She leaned closer and inhaled. No scent of powder, no milk. No faint baby smell that always lingered after a feed. Just linen and lavender spray. She stepped back slowly. Maybe they're extra clean, she thought. Maybe they're being careful with privacy. But her experience told her something else. This wasn't care. This was curation. She turned toward the rocking chair beside the crib. It was positioned under a window, as if placed there for a photograph. A folded baby blanket rested over the arm. Underneath it, she found a small stuffed elephant, tags still attached. No one had touched it. It didn't make sense. Babies left traces, spit up on burp cloths, stains, scattered toys. Here, every corner looked ready for a magazine shoot. At breakfast, she joined the small staff in the kitchen. A cook, a maid, and a gardener. They spoke quietly, avoiding eye contact. Did the baby sleep well? Claire asked lightly, trying to sound casual. The cook froze. The maid coughed into her napkin. He's fine, she said. Claire waited for someone to elaborate. No one did. The cook finally added, the Duchess likes her privacy. Best to give her space. Claire nodded but noticed their glances, the kind of quick, warning looks people exchanged when the truth wasn't allowed to surface. Later, while tidying the hall, she passed Meghan's study. The door was open just a crack. Inside, Meghan sat alone, typing furiously on a laptop. A tablet glowed beside her, open to what looked like a calendar filled with color-coded notes. She spoke softly to someone on the phone. Yes, it'll look authentic. Just make sure the lighting matches. I'll approve the final version tonight. Claire froze. Authentic. Lighting. Final version. Her stomach twisted. The call ended abruptly. Meghan closed her laptop, stood up, and noticed Claire in the hall. Oh, you startled me, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I was just confirming some charity plans. We're very busy these days. Claire nodded. Of course, ma'am. Is everything running smoothly? Meghan asked. Yes, ma'am. Just preparing the nursery. Meghan's gaze lingered for a moment, sharp and assessing. Good. I like things orderly. Orderly. That word echoed in Claire's head as she returned upstairs. Everything here was orderly. Controlled. Perfect. Almost too perfect. That afternoon, she decided to test something. She slightly tilted one of the baby bottles on the counter, loosening the cap. The next morning, it was gone, and replaced by a new one. She left a folded bib half open in the nursery drawer. By evening, it was refolded. Someone was resetting everything every night. But for whom? The following day, Meghan called a household meeting. We'll have visitors this weekend, she announced. A few family friends. Everything must look natural. Her tone was sweet, but firm. The staff nodded obediently. Natural, Claire repeated under her breath. For 3 days, she watched as the staff transformed the cottage. Toys arranged around the living room. A half-empty milk bottle placed on the coffee table. Blankets draped casually over chairs. It looked warm, real. But Claire knew. It was an illusion. A set designed for visitors. When the guests arrived, Claire stood in the background. Meghan floated through the room, smiling gracefully. Harry laughed loudly, perhaps too loudly. He's down for his nap, Meghan explained to one of her friends. He's been sleeping through the night. Such a good baby. The friend beamed. You're so lucky, Meghan. I barely slept for 6 months after mine was born. Megan's expression flickered. Yes, well, we have a great team. Claire's throat tightened. She looked toward the staircase. No monitor lights. No faint baby whimper. Just silence. After the guests left, Harry slumped into an armchair. That went well, he said. Meghan exhaled. They didn't suspect a thing. The words sliced through Claire like a blade. She told herself she must have misheard. Maybe Meghan meant something else. Maybe she was talking about the press, not the guests. But in her gut, she knew. The truth was hiding in plain sight. Days later, another strange event occurred. Claire was asked to deliver a package to the back room. When she entered, she saw Meghan's stylist unpacking fabrics, belly molds. Perfectly contoured silicone, flesh-toned, with adjustable straps. Claire froze. The stylist noticed her. "Oh, don't worry," she said quickly. "Old costume props from a project she did." Claire nodded slowly. "Of course." But her hands trembled as she left. That night, she sat in bed, replaying everything. The silence, the untouched nursery, the fake feeding schedules, the molds. The puzzle was forming, piece by piece. She started writing again in her journal. Something feels wrong. This doesn't feel like caring for a baby. It feels like protecting a secret. Her instincts told her to leave. But curiosity, mixed with a strange sense of duty, kept her there. She needed to know what was real. Then came the day that shattered her composure. It was raining, a soft drizzle tapping against the windows. Meghan and Harry had gone out for a private engagement. Claire was asked to tidy the upstairs rooms. While dusting the nursery, she noticed the baby monitor flicker for the first time. A faint light, then static, then a sound. Her heart skipped. She turned the volume up. It wasn't crying. It was muffled chatter. Voices. Two women whispering. One said, "She doesn't know." The other replied, "She can't. It's safer that way." The feed cut to black. Claire stood frozen, her pulse pounding. She doesn't know. Those words repeated in her head. Who didn't know? About what? Moments later, she heard footsteps. Fiona entered, carrying a tray. "Tea for the staff," she said, placing it down. Claire forced a smile. "Thank you." Fiona's eyes drifted to the monitor. "Oh," she said lightly. "Sometimes it picks up interference. Old wiring in the house." But Claire saw the way her fingers tightened around the tray. That evening, Meghan returned, cheerful and glowing. "It's good to be home," she said, slipping off her coat. "He missed me terribly, didn't he?" "Yes, ma'am," Fiona replied smoothly. Meghan smiled. "Excellent. Tomorrow, we'll have a short video taken. Something to share with the public. Make sure the nursery is perfect." The word perfect again. That night, Claire stayed awake. She could hear the distant hum of voices downstairs. Meghan, Harry, Fiona, and two men she didn't recognize. She caught fragments of sentences through the vents. Tight schedule, confidential delivery, no mistakes this time. At around midnight, a car pulled up again. Claire peeked through the window blinds. Same model, same driver. A woman stepped out this time, carrying a covered carrier. They disappeared inside the house. An hour later, the lights in the nursery came on. Claire crept down the hall, her bare feet silent on the carpet. Through the half-open door, she saw Meghan standing near the crib, whispering to the woman. Then, in one motion, Meghan lifted the carrier, smiled faintly, and nodded. The woman left. Claire backed away, breath caught in her throat. For the first time, she thought she might finally see Archie. But when she entered the nursery moments later, the crib was empty again. Only a warm indentation on the mattress. She reached out and touched the blanket. Still warm. She looked around the room. The air smelled faintly of perfume and latex. That was when she understood something or someone was being moved in and out of that house. A revolving door of secrecy. A production so elaborate that even staff were being used as unwitting participants. She sat in the rocking chair, staring at the crib, her mind racing. "There's a baby," she whispered to herself, "but where?" When dawn broke, she walked outside for the first time in days. The gardens shimmered with dew. She could see the photographers stationed far beyond the gates, waiting for a glimpse of royal domestic bliss. The image they wanted didn't exist. She wondered how long this could go on. How long a silence could last before it screamed. That evening, Meghan called her into the drawing room. "Claire," she said softly, "you've been very quiet." "I'm just trying to do my job," Claire replied carefully. "You must understand something," Meghan said. her voice almost tender. This life isn't what it looks like. People expect perfection. They expect a story. So sometimes you have to give them one. Claire's breath caught. What story, ma'am? Meghan's smile didn't falter. The one they already believe. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, thunder rumbled across the horizon. That night, the silence in Frogmore Cottage returned. Heavy, unnatural, as if the house itself knew what was happening and refused to speak. And as Claire lay awake in her bed, listening to that eerie stillness, she realized something chilling. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was absence. Because in that mansion of perfection, there was everything money could buy, except the sound of a child's cry. What came next would confirm her worst fear, when she discovered the photo that wasn't supposed to exist. And once she saw it, there was no going back. The photo that changed everything didn't arrive in an envelope, or from a news site, or through an official announcement. It came from inside the house, from Meghan's own tablet. Claire hadn't been snooping. Not at first. She'd been instructed to organize digital files for household records, charity documents, schedules, personal archives. It was routine work for trusted staff. But that day, something in her gut told her to look closer. The file was hidden, buried beneath layers of folders titled Events, Publicity, and Personal. And inside one obscure subfolder called Archie 1.0, she found it. There were 3 images. The first showed Meghan sitting in a hospital-like room. White sheets, pale blue walls, her makeup perfect, her hair styled, a hospital bracelet on her wrist, but blurred, as if edited. On the bed beside her, wrapped in a white blanket, lay a baby. But the baby's skin tone looked wrong. Not wrong in color, but wrong in light. Too smooth, too filtered, like a photograph pasted into another. Claire zoomed in. The shadow under the baby didn't match the lighting on Meghan's face. She leaned closer. The pixels bled slightly at the edges, like an amateur Photoshop job. She clicked on the second image. This time, Meghan and Harry together, smiling down at the same baby. Except, Harry's hand overlapped the blanket at an odd angle. A faint line ran across his fingers, a seam. Someone had copied and pasted them. Claire's mouth went dry. She stared at the file name. Archie_announce_V2_final. V2. Version 2. Her heart thudded in her chest. The third photo was even stranger. It was the one the world had seen, Meghan and Harry at Windsor Castle, presenting their newborn to the press. But the metadata, hidden in the file properties, told another story. The timestamp showed it was taken before the official birth date. 2 days before. Claire's hand trembled on the mouse. She checked again. The data was consistent. The photo had been captured on May 4th, but the public announcement had come on May 6th. Why would they? She whispered. Footsteps echoed in the hall. She quickly minimized the window. Fiona entered, smiling politely. You're working late. Yes, Claire said quickly. Just sorting through the archives. Good, Fiona said. Efficiency is valued here. But as she turned to leave, her tone changed. Be careful with private files. Some are sensitive. Not everything is meant to be seen. Claire forced a smile. Of course. Fiona's eyes lingered on her a moment too long before she left the room. When the door closed, Claire exhaled shakily. She looked back at the screen. The file was gone. Deleted. Just like that. Replaced by a blank directory labeled Access Restricted. Her pulse spiked. Someone had remote access. Someone was watching. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, staring at the wall, thinking about those photos. The odd lighting. The wrong shadows. The missing metadata. She wasn't a tech expert, but she knew enough to understand what she saw wasn't right. These weren't casual family pictures. They were composites. Staged. Edited. And the realization sank in like poison. If the photos were manipulated, what else had been faked? The next morning, she studied the framed pictures around the cottage. Dozens of them. Meghan, Harry, and Archie. All identical poses. Same blanket. Same angle. Different backgrounds. It looked like a cut-and-paste collage of royal domestic bliss. One photo in the hallway made her stop. Meghan was holding Archie near a window, sunlight streaming behind them. Claire stepped closer and frowned. The baby's reflection in the glass wasn't there. Her stomach flipped. She leaned closer. In every other photo with reflective surfaces, mirrors, windows, glass tables, the baby had no reflection. Meghan's did. Harry's did. The child's didn't. It could have been coincidence. Or it could have been the final confirmation that the baby in those photos wasn't there at all. Later that day, she overheard two staff members whispering in the pantry. "They're redoing the release," one said. "The first set didn't pass the authenticity check." "The metadata?" the other replied. "Yeah." Someone noticed the timestamps. Claire froze. Authenticity. Metadata. They were talking about the same thing she saw. She waited until they left, then slipped out quietly, her heart pounding. She couldn't tell anyone outside the house. Her NDA forbade it. And who would believe her anyway? A royal baby is fake sounded insane. But the evidence was piling up. She started keeping a mental record. Every inconsistency, every strange edit, every missing document. That evening, Fiona called a staff meeting. "We'll be releasing a new photo set tomorrow," she said crisply. "Everyone must ensure the house looks lived in. The Duke and Duchess will appear briefly for the camera crew. No one is to enter the room during filming." Claire nodded along, but inside she was shaking. When the crew arrived the next day, Claire stayed on the landing, pretending to dust picture frames. She could see the main room from above. Meghan stood by the window again, draped in soft white fabric, glowing in the camera light. A bundle rested in her arms, covered completely by a blanket. Harry stood close, his hand on her back. "Ready when you are," the photographer said. "Let's do this," Meghan replied. The shutter clicked. Once, twice, then again. The scene looked peaceful, warm, maternal. But Claire's eyes went straight to the bundle. No shifting weight, no small movement, nothing. She realized then, the blanket wasn't shaped right. It wasn't the natural round of a baby's body. It was stiff, angular, like folded fabric around something else. Maybe a doll, maybe nothing at all. When the session ended, Claire watched the crew leave. They carried hard drives, memory cards, cameras. Every image was locked down immediately. She'd never seen such tight control. Hours later, she found Meghan sitting alone, scrolling through the photos on her tablet. She seemed pleased. "This one," she said softly, tapping a picture. "It looks real." Claire's breath caught. Meghan looked up, meeting her gaze. "Sometimes," she said, "the image is more important than the truth." It was said calmly, without guilt, as though she were explaining a branding strategy. That night, Claire's fear turned to certainty. The photos weren't just manipulated, they were curated to uphold a lie. She wondered how deep the deception went. Did Harry know? Did the palace? Or was Meghan orchestrating something on her own? The next morning, news outlets exploded with headlines. Archie's first family portrait released. The Duke and Duchess radiant with newborn son. The public swooned. The image spread across the internet like wildfire. But to Claire, every detail screamed fabrication. The lighting, the folds of the blanket, the perfectly balanced composition. It was too clean, too cinematic. She wanted to shout the truth. But instead, she watched the lie grow. Days later, she caught Harry pacing in the garden, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, urgent. "I told you it doesn't feel right. We can't just—" He paused. "Yes, I know it's too late now." He threw the phone down on the bench, raking his hands through his hair. He looked broken, conflicted. Claire turned away before he noticed her. But she couldn't forget the look on his face. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. That night, another file appeared on Meghan's laptop. Claire saw it briefly as she walked by the open door. The title read, "Press Kit, Version 3. 3 versions of the same event. 3 layers of deception." And then, one morning, a journalist appeared at the gates, an older man with a press badge. He wasn't part of the usual royal pool. "I've got a delivery for the Duchess," he told security. "Personal photos for review." Claire caught a glimpse of the envelope in his hand, stamped with a private studio's name. She recognized it. The same company that had done retouching for celebrity campaigns. When he left, she slipped out back and looked through the trash bins. She didn't expect to find anything. But buried under plastic wrap and discarded flowers, she found a proof sheet, marked, "Do not use." She wiped it clean with her apron and looked closer. There were 9 photos printed on the sheet, each one slightly different. The same pose, the same blanket, the same background, but the baby's face changed. In one, lighter skin. In another, darker. In one, blue eyes. In another, brown. Each labeled with handwritten notes. Option A, natural tone. Option B, softer lighting. Option C, edit eyes. Claire nearly dropped the sheet. She realized, with dawning horror, that even the child's features were being customized. Someone was building a baby out of pixels. That night, she hid the proof sheet under her mattress. It was the first tangible evidence she had. Proof that the public image of Archie wasn't just controlled, it was manufactured. But her discovery didn't stay secret for long. The next morning, her quarters were searched. She returned from breakfast to find her belongings slightly displaced, suitcase unzipped, drawers misaligned. The proof sheet was gone. Her throat tightened. She ran to the window. Fiona stood outside, speaking with a man in a dark suit. He held the proof sheet in his hand. When their eyes met, Fiona smiled faintly. An unsettling, knowing smile. That evening, Claire was summoned. "Have a seat," Fiona said, closing the door behind her. Meghan sat across the room, legs crossed, tablet in hand. Harry stood by the fireplace, silent. "Claire," Meghan began, her tone calm, almost maternal. "We've noticed some irregularities in your behavior. Looking through private files, asking questions. I understand your curiosity, but this is a delicate situation." Claire swallowed hard. "I didn't mean any harm, ma'am. I was only trying to perform my duties." "I'm sure you were," Meghan said softly. "But in this family, appearances matter. More than truth, sometimes. I need loyalty. Blind loyalty." Harry turned his head away. Meghan's gaze sharpened. "You've been good, Claire. Don't ruin that." Then, in a quieter voice, she added, "Some people get lost in this story. You don't want to be one of them." Claire nodded weakly. The meeting ended. But that warning, "You don't want to be one of them," echoed in her mind like thunder. She left the room, trembling. She knew then that she'd crossed a line. They were watching her. They knew what she'd seen. But she also knew she couldn't stop now. Because one question kept her awake at night. If the photos were fake, if the images were staged, then where was the real baby? And the answer to that question, she was about to learn, would make her blood run cold. Contracts. Most people think of them as paperwork, something dry, impersonal, a formality. But in Frogmore Cottage, they were weapons. Claire discovered this the day she was handed a thick, leather-bound folder by Fiona, the household manager. The folder bore the royal seal, heavy and embossed. It was the kind of document that made even experienced lawyers pause. She'd signed the initial NDA already, but this was different. "This is an addendum," Fiona said. Her voice clipped, professional, almost cold. "It outlines additional responsibilities and restrictions. You'll need to sign before continuing your duties. No exceptions." Claire flipped through the pages, eyes widening. There were 37 clauses in the first section. Then, the second section, 30 more. The third, a list of penalties for breach, including fines, criminal liability, and legal injunctions. The language was precise, almost surgical. No loopholes. No mercy. "You'll need a lawyer," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. Fiona's lips curled into a thin smile. "You don't need a lawyer. You need compliance. Signing is not optional. We expect your complete cooperation." Cooperation. The word felt like a warning. Claire scanned the clauses. Some were ordinary, duties, schedules, protocols for infant care, but others were chilling. "You may not discuss the physical presence, health status, or photographic evidence of the child with any third party, under any circumstance. You may not question the authenticity of any documents, media, or communications regarding the child. You are prohibited from accessing or copying any images or files not expressly authorized for your duties. You understand that any breach will result in financial penalties of up to £500,000 and immediate termination." Her hands shook. The language didn't just protect privacy. It enforced silence, absolute and terrifying. As she signed, she couldn't stop thinking. If the household went to these lengths to control what she could see or say, what were they hiding? A week later, another folder appeared on her desk, labeled Archie Administrative Files. She flipped through it carefully, pretending to sort paperwork. Every sheet was pristine, typed in an official font, stamped with seals. But the content made her blood run cold. Schedules, feeding charts, health updates, all generic. There were no doctor signatures, no notes about weight gain, nothing about vaccinations. Just a meticulously crafted record that looked official but was hollow. Then she found something unexpected, an envelope marked, restricted, legal. Inside were copies of contracts with photographers, digital media teams, and even a hospital that supposedly attended the birth. Every signature was present, every date meticulously filled. Except, none of the hospital staff existed. The names were fabricated, fake employees, pseudonyms. Addresses led to empty lots or unrelated businesses. She sat back, heart racing. They had forged legal documentation to make a non-existent birth appear legitimate. It was a carefully constructed web. Every photo, every public statement, every official claim reinforced by contracts, signed by invisible hands, protected by fear and legal authority. Claire's mind raced. She had seen the proof sheets. She had observed the stage photography. Now, the contracts confirmed it. Someone had planned this deception from the very beginning. And then she found the most disturbing part. A clause buried deep in the back. Employee acknowledges that the child may not be physically present in the household at all times. Employee agrees to maintain the illusion of presence, including but not limited to feeding simulations, clothing placement, and other caretaking performances. The words burned her eyes. Simulations. Performances. Not care. Not love. The revelation was unbearable. She had been operating under the assumption she was caring for a real infant, living in the same house. But this clause explicitly stated she might never even see the child. The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in. She realized then that her entire understanding of her job, of her role in this household, was based on a lie. And the lie wasn't small, it was massive. Claire tried to talk to someone about it, anyone. She approached a fellow staff member, a quiet housemaid who had been with the family for years. "Did you read the new contracts?" Claire asked gently. The maid's face went pale. She shook her head. "I don't want to get involved," she whispered. "You don't know what's at stake." "What's at stake?" Claire pressed. "The same thing you just read. And more. People who talk disappear from this household. Or worse. You've been warned." Claire swallowed hard. From that day on, she paid even closer attention to everything. The instructions, the routines, the staged play of domestic life. Every action she performed was part of someone else's plan. Every feed she prepared, every blanket she fluffed, every toy she placed, it wasn't for a baby's comfort. It was for appearances. She began documenting everything in secret, careful not to violate the NDA. Notes about schedules, photos, conversations, odd deliveries. She labeled it Observation Journal. Then came the day she realized the contracts weren't just about silence. They were about control. A week after she signed the addendum, Fiona approached her. "There's a minor adjustment to your duties," she said. "We need you to ensure the nursery appears lived in for the next set of visitors. The baby will not be present." "Understood," Claire nodded, but internally, she was reeling. They were asking her to perform the role of a caretaker for an empty room. "Do not deviate," Fiona added. "You've seen the consequences of deviation." Consequences. The word echoed in Claire's head. Over the next few days, Claire noticed other staff following strange patterns. A cook meticulously placed empty bottles and folded blankets. The gardener rearranged toys in the yard to create the illusion of play. Every staff member was complicit, knowingly or unknowingly, in maintaining the household's illusion. One evening, Claire stumbled upon a hidden drawer in Fiona's office. She opened it briefly, enough to glimpse the contents, a collection of letters, contracts, and directives labeled media control, image approval, and royal narrative. Each sheet outlined exactly what should be said, photographed, and reported to the public. Every lie was scripted. Every smile was rehearsed. She closed the drawer quickly, heart pounding. That night, she lay awake in her quarters, the leather-bound addendum open beside her. She reread the clause about the child's possible absence. Every word burned into her mind. Simulations. Performances. Absence. Claire realized that her job had never been about care. It had been about secrecy, about sustaining a narrative, about enforcing a lie so tightly that even the staff became actors in the deception. For the first time, fear replaced confusion. She began to connect the dots. The staged photos. The missing hospital visits. The perfectly organized nursery. The contracts. The proof sheets. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The baby she had been told existed, Archie Harrison, may never have been physically present in the household when she was there. And if that was true, what else had been orchestrated? The very idea made her stomach twist. But before she could fully process it, there was a knock at her door. Fiona's voice called from the hallway. "Claire, we need to speak. Now." Claire's heart jumped. She opened the door cautiously. Fiona stood there, expression neutral but eyes sharp. "Come with me," she said. They walked down the hall. Meghan was waiting in the drawing room, seated calmly. Harry stood behind her, quiet, hands clasped. Fiona closed the door. "Claire," Meghan said softly, "you've been doing excellent work. But some things are not meant to be questioned. The contracts you signed? They exist for your protection." Claire's throat tightened. "Protection?" "Yes," Meghan said. "Because sometimes the truth can be dangerous." Harry's eyes flickered toward her, and for the first time, Claire thought she saw hesitation. "Conflict." Meghan leaned forward. "Just remember, loyalty matters more than curiosity. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed." Claire nodded, swallowing hard. That night, she returned to her quarters. The addendum lay on her desk. She stared at it for hours. She realized then that the contracts were more than legal documents. They were instruments of fear, control, and deception. And if she didn't navigate them carefully, she could lose more than her job. And she had already seen the first piece of proof that the contracts were shielding something far bigger than she could imagine. The next day, an envelope arrived at her quarters. No sender, no markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a warning. "Some truths are better left unseen," it read. Claire knew one thing for certain. She was on the edge of a secret that could shake the monarchy itself. And the next discovery would prove that what she had been hiding, or pretending to see, was just the beginning. The day of the arrival was unlike any other in Claire's experience as a nanny. She had worked in households where birth announcements were met with celebration, tears, chaos. Hospitals buzzing, relatives impatient, babies crying. But Frogmore Cottage, it was a theater. And Claire had been cast, unwittingly, as both audience and extra. She woke early that morning to the usual quiet. The birds outside chirped, the trees swayed softly in a mild spring breeze, but inside the house, it was as if even the walls were holding their breath. Every step she took on the polished wooden floor echoed too loudly. Every creak in the door sounded like a warning. Fiona arrived first, as always, clipboard in hand. Her calm demeanor belied the tension in her eyes. "Today is important," she said. "You will be following instructions to the letter. The family will appear shortly for the announcement. Remember, discretion and presentation are everything." Claire nodded, her stomach twisting. "Understood." Fiona's next words carried a chilling weight. "And the baby will not be present for most of the day." Claire's head snapped up. "What do you mean? Isn't he?" "Just follow the instructions," Fiona said sharply, cutting her off. "Everything has been prepared. You'll see when the time comes." Claire swallowed hard. This was the moment she had been anticipating for weeks. Finally, she would meet Archie Harrison. But even before that meeting, unease gnawed at her. Something was wrong. The nursery was immaculate, as always. Bottles arranged in neat rows, blankets folded perfectly, toys lined up like soldiers ready for inspection. But there was no sign of the chaos that came with newborn care. No soiled cloths, no faint smell of milk, no cries piercing the air. It all looked staged. She spent the morning performing her duties as instructed. Fluffed pillows, adjusted blankets, set toys at precise angles, cleaned surfaces, checked monitors. Every movement she made felt meaningless, like rehearsing for a scene that might never be performed. Around midday, there was movement. A car approached the gate, black, tinted windows. Claire's pulse quickened. The kind of nervous excitement she had felt in her first week returned, multiplied by fear and doubt. A figure emerged from the shadows of the vehicle, a woman carrying a large bundle, draped carefully in white. Claire's heart raced. She thought, "This is it. This is Archie." Fiona intercepted the woman at the door. Quiet words were exchanged. Then the bundle was carried inside, but Claire wasn't allowed to see. She was instructed to stay upstairs, dusting the hallway while muffled voices carried from below. The whispers were low but tense. Claire could hear Megan's voice, soft but deliberate. "Make sure it's positioned properly." Another voice, male, responded, "All set. Should we check the lighting one more time?" Claire froze. Hours passed like this, her anxiety gnawing at her. When finally she was permitted back downstairs, she approached the nursery slowly, careful not to disturb anything. The crib lay in its usual place, blankets arranged with military precision. But the bundle, what she had glimpsed earlier, was gone. She stepped closer. The room smelled faintly of fabric softener. She reached out to touch the blanket. Still warm, but no weight, no breath, no movement. Her stomach turned. She had been prepared to hold a newborn, feed a baby, do what she had trained to do her entire life. But now she realized that the object she had seen being carried earlier was not Archie. Or if it wasn't real in the way she had been led to believe. Meghan entered shortly after, glowing in soft cream attire, her hair styled impeccably, her smile perfect. "Everything looks wonderful," she said to Claire, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. "Yes, ma'am," Claire replied, forcing herself to remain composed. "Good," Meghan said, placing a hand on the crib. "He's been sleeping so well. I hope you'll continue to ensure the nursery remains comfortable." Claire's mind spun. Sleeping so well? Where is he? Who is he? Harry appeared next, checking his watch nervously, adjusting his tie. He smiled at Meghan, whispered something, then glanced at Claire. His eyes flickered briefly, conflicted, anxious. She couldn't decipher what she saw: regret, concern, or complicity. By mid-afternoon, the photographer arrived. Not the usual staff photographer, but someone from an outside agency. He set up lights, adjusted angles, and gave instructions in quiet, clipped tones. Meghan and Harry took positions near the crib. The blanket was lifted carefully, the bundle held with precision. Claire's stomach knotted as she realized the bundle wasn't alive. Or if it was hidden in a way designed to create the illusion of a baby.